She wasn't part of the core team, just assigned to observe. Captain Lisa Viper Chen sat in the back corner of the Joint Operations Center at Fort Bragg, her laptop open and notepad ready, taking detailed notes on the multi-service training exercise unfolding on the screens before her. To the colonels and majors running the simulation, she was invisible, a junior Air Force intelligence officer who had been assigned to document lessons learned, nothing more than a bureaucratic requirement that higher headquarters had imposed on their important work. At 32, Lisa had learned to blend into the background of military meetings, to watch and listen without drawing attention to herself. Her slight frame and quiet demeanor made it easy for senior officers to overlook her presence, which was exactly how she preferred it. She wasn't here to participate in the decision-making, wasn't expected to contribute to the tactical planning, wasn't part of the inner circle that would determine the success or failure of the exercise. But when the power failed at 1,347 hours and the entire operations center plunged into darkness, when backup systems failed to activate and chaos began to spread through the room of confused and disoriented officers, everything changed. In that moment of crisis, when panic threatened to overwhelm the command structure, Lisa stepped forward from her observer's position, gave clear and decisive orders, and brought immediate calm to a situation that was rapidly spiraling out of control. By the time the emergency power came back on 23 minutes later, by the time the simulation could resume and normal operations could continue, everyone in that room was looking to Captain Chen for leadership. Because they had learned something that her personnel file couldn't tell them, something that her quiet demeanor had concealed, that sometimes the most junior officer in the room is the one who knows exactly what to do when everything falls apart. Welcome to the Silent Salute. Before we continue with this incredible story, tell us in the comments from which city in the world are you watching this video today. Your support means everything to us, and if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, please hit that subscribe button. We're growing every day, and every single one of you makes that possible. Thank you for being part of our community. Fort Bragg, North Carolina, was conducting Exercise Iron Thunder, a massive joint training operation that brought together elements from all 5 military services to test their ability to coordinate complex multi-domain operations. The exercise simulated a large-scale conflict in the Pacific Theater, with hundreds of units participating from bases across the United States and allied nations around the world. The Joint Operations Center was the nerve center for the exercise, a high-tech facility that could monitor and coordinate military operations across air, land, sea, space, and cyber domains simultaneously. Inside, more than 50 officers and senior NCOs from various services worked around the clock to manage the simulated conflict, making decisions that would be analyzed and studied for months to come. Captain Lisa Chen had been assigned to the exercise as an observer from Air Force Intelligence, tasked with documenting tactical innovations and identifying areas where inter-service cooperation could be improved. It was important work, but it wasn't glamorous. She was essentially a note-taker and report writer, someone whose job was to watch other people make decisions rather than to participate in the decision-making process herself. Lisa's background was unconventional for an intelligence officer. She had enlisted in the Air Force at 18, serving 4 years as a communications specialist before earning her commission through officer candidate school. Her technical expertise and analytical mind had led to assignments in cyber warfare and electronic intelligence, fields where her ability to think systematically and solve complex problems had earned recognition from her superiors. But what Lisa's official record didn't show was her extensive experience in crisis management and emergency response. During her enlisted years, she had served as a volunteer firefighter in the communities near her duty stations, eventually becoming certified as an emergency medical technician and a search and rescue coordinator. She had responded to natural disasters, industrial accidents, and mass casualty events, always as a volunteer, always in her spare time, always without any expectation of military recognition or career advancement. The skills Lisa had developed through her volunteer work, the ability to assess rapidly changing situations, to coordinate multiple agencies with different capabilities and procedures, to remain calm under extreme pressure, had never been formally recognized by the Air Force. They were just personal interests, hobbies that she pursued because she believed in helping others, not because they were relevant to her military duties. The morning of the power failure had been routine for the exercise. Coalition forces were conducting a simulated amphibious assault, while air units provided close air support and cyber warfare specialists attempted to disrupt enemy communications. The operations center was managing dozens of moving pieces simultaneously, with officers from different services coordinating their actions through a complex web of communication systems and shared displays. Lisa sat in her designated corner, taking notes on how the different services shared information and coordinated their actions. She was particularly interested in the communication protocols being used, noting areas where technical incompatibilities were causing delays or confusion. It was detailed, methodical work that required her to understand not just what was happening, but why certain decisions were being made and how they affected the overall mission. Colonel James Morrison, the exercise director, was a veteran Army officer who had commanded at every level from platoon to brigade. He ran the operations center with the practiced efficiency of someone who had spent decades managing complex military operations, but even he was feeling the strain of coordinating so many different units and capabilities simultaneously. Major Sarah Williams, the deputy exercise director, was an Air Force officer with extensive experience in joint operations. She served as Morrison's primary assistant, helping to coordinate between the various service components and ensuring that communication flowed smoothly between different command levels. Lieutenant Colonel Mike Rodriguez from the Marines was responsible for the amphibious assault component of the exercise, while Navy Commander Susan Park coordinated the maritime elements. Each service had its own procedures, its own terminology, its own way of approaching tactical problems, and keeping them all working together required constant attention and adjustment. At 1,347 hours, during the most complex phase of the simulated operation, everything went wrong at once. The primary power grid serving the operations center failed without warning, plunging the facility into complete darkness. Emergency lighting should have activated immediately, but a maintenance error had left the backup systems offline. Within seconds, the high-tech operations center had been transformed into a chaotic maze of confused voices and stumbling figures. What the hell happened? Colonel Morrison's voice cut through the darkness. But without the electronic displays and communication systems that had been managing the exercise, he had no way to assess the situation or coordinate a response. "Sir, I think we've lost primary power," Major Williams called out from somewhere across the room. "I can't see any of the displays, and my radio isn't working." The darkness was absolute, and the normal sounds of the operations center, the hum of electronics, the quiet conversations of operators, the constant background noise of communication systems, had been replaced by confusion and the shuffling of people trying to navigate through equipment they couldn't see. "Does anyone have a flashlight?" Commander Park's voice was strained with the effort of trying to maintain professional composure in an increasingly chaotic situation. "I've got my phone," someone called out, and scattered points of blue light began to appear as officers activated their mobile devices. But the weak illumination only made the situation more surreal, casting strange shadows and creating the illusion of movement where there was none. Lisa remained seated in her corner for the first few seconds after the power failed, her mind automatically processing the situation and analyzing the options available. She could hear the growing confusion in the voices around her, could sense the panic that was beginning to build as senior officers realized that they had lost control of not just the exercise, but of their own command facility. That's when her training kicked in, not her military training, but the emergency response experience she had gained through years of volunteer work. Lisa had been in similar situations before, had seen how quickly confusion could turn into panic and how panic could lead to injuries and poor decisions that made bad situations worse. Without thinking about rank or protocol or the fact that she was supposed to be an invisible observer, Lisa stood up and activated the powerful LED flashlight that she always carried in her tactical vest. The beam cut through the darkness like a beacon, immediately drawing the attention of everyone in the room. "Listen up," Lisa called out in a clear, authoritative voice that carried easily across the operations center. "Everyone stop moving right now. Stay exactly where you are until we can get some light in here." The effect was immediate. The confused shuffling and murmured conversations stopped as officers instinctively responded to the confident command voice that had emerged from the chaos. "Sir," Lisa continued, directing her words toward where she had last seen Colonel Morrison. "We need to establish accountability for all personnel and then conduct an orderly evacuation to the emergency assembly area." She moved carefully through the darkened room, her flashlight beams sweeping back and forth to illuminate the faces of the officers and NCOs who were now looking to her for guidance. "Major Williams, can you account for your section?" Lisa called out, using the same calm, professional tone that she had learned during emergency response operations. "Yes, I've got everyone here," Williams replied, her voice showing relief at having someone take charge of the situation. "Commander Park, how about your people?" "All present and accounted for," Park responded. Lisa continued the accountability process, working methodically through each section of the operations center while simultaneously organizing an evacuation plan that would get everyone out safely without causing panic or injuries. "Colonel Morrison, sir, I recommend we evacuate to the parking lot in single file, with each person maintaining contact with the person in front of them. I'll lead with my flashlight, and we'll use cell phone lights to mark our route." Morrison's response showed both confusion and grudging respect. "Captain Chen, isn't it? How do you know emergency evacuation procedures?" "Volunteer firefighter and EMT training, sir," Lisa replied as she began organizing the evacuation. "I've done this kind of thing before." The evacuation proceeded smoothly, with Lisa leading the way and the senior officers following her instructions without question. She positioned people at key points along the route to serve as guides, established a headcount system to ensure that no one was left behind, and coordinated with base security to ensure that emergency responders were notified of their situation. Once everyone was safely outside, Lisa immediately began organizing a temporary command post in the parking lot, using available cell phones and portable radios to re-establish communication with the units participating in the exercise. "Sir," she said to Colonel Morrison, "we need to notify the exercise participants that we're experiencing technical difficulties and that they should hold their current positions until we can re-establish positive control." Morrison looked around at the organized chaos that Lisa had created, officers from different services working together efficiently, communication being re-established with scattered units, and a clear command structure emerging from what had been complete confusion just minutes earlier. "Captain Chen," he said slowly, "it seems like you've taken charge of our emergency response. How did you know what to do?" Lisa's response was matter-of-fact and professional. "Emergency management principles are the same whether you're dealing with a building fire or a power failure, sir. Establish accountability, ensure safety, maintain communications, and keep the mission moving forward." She gestured toward the organized activity around them. "Right now our mission is to safely resume the exercise once power is restored. That means keeping track of where our units are, maintaining the tactical picture, and being ready to continue operations as soon as our systems come back online." For the next 20 minutes, Lisa effectively ran the exercise from a parking lot, coordinating between multiple services and maintaining operational control of a complex training scenario using nothing but portable radios and cellular phones. She established communication relays, organized information flow, and ensured that the tactical situation remained stable despite the loss of the primary command and control facility. When the power finally came back on and the operations center was declared safe to reoccupy, Lisa had already organized the reentry process and prepared status updates that would allow the exercise to resume with minimal delay. As the officers filed back into the restored operations center, Colonel Morrison called for everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "I want everyone to understand what just happened here. When our primary systems failed and we lost control of the situation, Captain Chen stepped forward and demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership that we hope to develop through exercises like this one." He gestured toward Lisa, who was still standing near the door with her notepad and flashlight, looking slightly embarrassed by the attention. "Captain Chen isn't assigned to our operations staff. She's here as an observer, documenting our procedures and identifying lessons learned. But when we needed leadership, when our normal command structure was disrupted by circumstances beyond our control, she provided exactly the kind of calm, professional response that kept us mission-focused and safe." Morrison paused, looking directly at Lisa. "That's the kind of officer we need in leadership positions. Someone who can think clearly under pressure, who can coordinate multiple agencies and personalities, who can maintain mission focus even when everything seems to be falling apart. Major Williams stepped forward, adding her own observations. "Sir, if I may," Captain Chen's response was textbook emergency management. She established accountability, organized evacuation procedures, maintained communications, and kept the exercise moving forward. Those are advanced leadership skills that you don't learn from a manual. The praise was making Lisa increasingly uncomfortable, and she tried to deflect the attention back to the exercise. "Sir, we should probably resume operations. The units have been holding position for 23 minutes, and we need to get them back into the scenario." But Morrison wasn't finished. "Captain Chen, where did you learn emergency management procedures? That wasn't basic military training." Lisa's response was quietly professional. "Volunteer firefighter and emergency medical technician, sir. Search and rescue coordinator. I've been doing emergency response work since I was 19. The revelation sparked immediate interest from several of the senior officers. Commander Park stepped forward with obvious curiosity. "Captain, have you ever considered a career in emergency management or disaster response? Those are exactly the skills that military units need when they're supporting civilian authorities during natural disasters." Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez from the Marines added his own perspective. "We're always looking for officers who understand how to coordinate between different agencies and personality types. Joint operations require exactly the kind of flexibility and adaptability you just demonstrated." Lisa found herself at the center of a conversation that was rapidly expanding beyond the immediate situation. The senior officers were recognizing that her emergency response background represented capabilities that were directly relevant to military operations, particularly in the complex joint and coalition environments that characterized modern warfare. Colonel Morrison made a decision that would change the trajectory of Lisa's career. "Captain Chen, I'm going to be recommending you for assignment to the Joint Staff's Emergency Response Planning section. We need officers who understand how to manage complex, multi-agency operations under pressure." He turned to address the other officers in the room. What we witnessed today was leadership in its purest form. Someone who saw a problem, understood how to solve it, and took action without waiting for permission or direction. That's exactly what we're trying to develop in our junior officers. The exercise resumed, but Lisa found that her role had fundamentally changed. Instead of sitting in the corner taking notes, she was now being consulted on communication procedures, asked for her input on coordination protocols, and included in the decision-making process that she had previously only observed. Over the next 3 days of the exercise, Lisa's emergency management background proved invaluable as the training scenario included simulated natural disasters, refugee crises, and humanitarian assistance operations. Her ability to think systematically about complex problems and to coordinate between different agencies with varying capabilities made her an essential part of the planning process. But more than her technical expertise was the leadership presence that she had demonstrated during the power failure. The other officers had seen her remain calm under pressure, take charge of a chaotic situation, and maintain mission focus despite the loss of normal command and control systems. Those were leadership qualities that couldn't be taught from a textbook. They were the result of experience, training, and personal character. At the conclusion of the exercise, Colonel Morrison presented Lisa with a letter of commendation that specifically recognized her leadership during the emergency and her contributions to the overall success of the training operation. "Captain Chen," Morrison said during the formal award ceremony, "your actions during the power failure exemplified the kind of adaptable, mission-focused leadership that our military needs in the 21st century. You demonstrated that leadership isn't about rank or position. It's about the willingness to step forward when the situation demands it." He paused, looking directly at her. "More importantly, you showed us that expertise and experience come in many forms. Your volunteer emergency response background gave you capabilities that proved essential to our mission success. That's a reminder that we need to look beyond traditional career paths when we're identifying and developing leaders." The recognition that Lisa received from Exercise Iron Thunder led to immediate changes in her career trajectory. Within weeks, she was reassigned to the Joint Staff in Washington, D.C., where her emergency management expertise was put to use developing planning scenarios for complex humanitarian assistance and disaster relief operations. Her new position involved coordinating between military units and civilian agencies during natural disasters, terrorist attacks, and other emergencies that required rapid, multi-agency response. It was challenging work that drew on both her military intelligence background and her volunteer emergency response experience. But perhaps more importantly, Lisa's experience during the power failure had established her reputation as someone who could be counted on to perform under pressure. Senior officers who had witnessed her leadership during the crisis sought her out for assignments that required calm thinking and effective coordination under stressful conditions. 6 months after Exercise Iron Thunder, Lisa was promoted to major and assigned as the Deputy Director of the Joint Staff's Emergency Response Planning Division. Her responsibilities included developing protocols for military support to civilian authorities, training scenarios for multi-agency operations, and coordination procedures for international humanitarian assistance missions. The promotion ceremony was conducted by General Patricia Morrison, the same officer who had once served alongside Medal of Honor recipient Francisco Martinez. Morrison had heard about Lisa's performance during the Fort Bragg exercise and specifically requested the opportunity to recognize her achievements. Major Chen, General Morrison said during the ceremony, "Your career exemplifies something that our military sometimes forgets, that leadership and expertise can come from unexpected places. Your volunteer emergency response background gave you capabilities that proved essential when everything else failed." Morrison continued, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades in leadership positions. "But more than your technical expertise is your willingness to step forward when the situation demands it. Leadership isn't about waiting for permission or following protocols. It's about recognizing what needs to be done and having the courage to do it." The general's words resonated deeply with Lisa, who had spent years thinking of her volunteer work as separate from her military career. She was beginning to understand that her diverse background wasn't a distraction from her military service. It was what made her uniquely valuable as an officer and leader. Over the following year, Major Chen led response planning for several major disasters, including a Category 4 hurricane that struck the Gulf Coast and a magnitude 7.2 earthquake that devastated parts of California. In each case, her ability to coordinate between military units, federal agencies, state and local governments, and volunteer organizations proved essential to effective response operations. But it was her role in responding to a terrorist attack at a major transportation hub that truly established Lisa's reputation as one of the military's premier emergency response coordinators. When explosions disabled a major airport and threatened to cause mass casualties, Lisa was called upon to coordinate the multi-agency response that would determine whether the situation remained manageable or spiraled into a national catastrophe. Responsibility and their ability to see clearly when everyone else is stumbling in the dark. Lisa Chen had entered that operations center as an observer, someone whose job was to watch and document while others made the important decisions. But when the lights went out and leadership was needed, she discovered that she had been preparing for that moment her entire adult life. Through every volunteer fire call, every emergency response, every situation where someone needed to step forward and take charge. The darkness had lasted only 23 minutes, but it had illuminated something that would define the rest of her career and influence the lives of countless people who would depend on her leadership during their own moments of crisis and confusion. This story was brought to you by the Silent Salute. Before we leave you today, here's our question. Have you ever known someone who stepped forward when leadership was needed, regardless of their official position or rank? Someone who proved that true leadership isn't about titles or authority, but about the willingness to take responsibility when others are paralyzed by crisis? Tell us in the comments about the unexpected leaders in your life, the people who emerged from the background to provide exactly what was needed when everything seemed to be falling apart. And if you think stories like this need to be heard, if you believe that leadership comes in many forms, and that we should recognize and develop the capabilities that people bring from all aspects of their lives, hit that subscribe button to support the channel. We'll see you in the next one, where we'll continue to share the stories of extraordinary people who remind us that heroes and leaders often emerge from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the most important qualifications are the ones that never appear on official records.